Now we're going to jump to Charles Tarbey, Chairman and owner of Century 21 Australasia. Charles, have we got you in the studio? Hi there, Charles.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Oh,
now,
okay.
I think we've got a bit of technical glitch with your graphs at the moment, so we might have to get you to describe them. But we know you're a man with all the numbers, so that should be good enough.
Yeah, sorry about that. You just have to look at me for a bit longer.
That's all right, Charles. Such a pretty face in real estate. Let's start off with the auction clearance rates.
Yeah, look, they were pretty fantastic again, even though it's getting tougher and tougher for the auctioneers because the bidders just aren't there, but there are still bidders who are buying, and the clearance rates were slightly down on last week, which was 71.6, so this week they were 71.17%. So it's not a bad situation at all. This time last year it was 76+%. So overall it's still tracking very, very well. Sydney came in at just over 71%, and Melbourne didn't actually win this week. Melbourne had a 73.8% clearance rate, but the winning capital city this week was Adelaide. 75.5% was the clearance rate there. Canberra was over 70 as well, but it's a pretty good week all the way around.
Wonderful. And I was actually at a lunch with your friends at CoreLogic, and I gather they've been spending millions and millions refining their processes even more to get even more accurate data these days.
They are. They're looking at a number of different ways of capturing the data. We're working on a platform now that will allow any person within the C21 organisation across Australasia to, when they're registering their bids at auction, it's registering automatic on our platform and creating a clearance rate in real time, both for the office, for that suburb, for the region, for the state, and right across the country. And so that's going to be launched in a few weeks' time, and that'll give us an even more accurate read of what's happening as it's happening.
There'll be no excuses for people not knowing what's going on. Well, let's jump for homes advertised for sale.
Yeah, again, another week of increase, not a dramatic increase, but we've had quite a few weeks now where there's been an incremental move upwards, and it was 0.74% climb this week. And I know I was talking to Tom earlier on Talking Lifestyle Radio, and I'm sure he'll mention it now, that he's been engaged to do a lot more auctions around the traps. So they're starting to see more properties coming on, which is always a good indication that it's going to get better and better for buyers, and it's making it a bit more balanced marketplace than we've had over the last few years, which again is what we really all look forward to.
And then the rent price movements.
Yeah, pretty interesting watching the rent price movement. This week was a zero in terms of a national increase, but there were two real standouts this week. Darwin was a standout. It had an increase of 1.49% over this time last week, but the real standout was Hobart, and it had an increase of 3.53% over this time last week. So those two capital cities have been actually getting some climbs for some time. Mind you, the Darwin market collapsed for a while. Perth is still stable, or reasonably stable compared to where it was, but overall it's just as steady as she goes.
Wonderful. And then finally, the vacancy rates.
Yeah, Melbourne's winner again, 0.92%, Chris. It's just had an extraordinary run in terms of its vacancy rate. The marketplace in Sydney hasn't been bad either, 1.89%. So, you know, those two capital cities continue to outperform everywhere else. The interesting one that we've been watching for a long time, of course, is Perth, and it still remains in the sevens. It was a low 7.36 last week. It just climbed again to 7.98% this week, hoping to keep it under 8 and getting it down into the sixes, but those three capital cities gave us a 3.6% vacancy rate when you look at an average.
Wonderful. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Charles, and certainly it'll be interesting. I think you're having CoreLogic on the show in about 2 weeks' time to hear some updates from them as well.
Yes, I will be. We're going through a real lot of information in fine detail in a couple of weeks' time. I don't know where you are. I think you are away somewhere. I don't know where, but I hope you have a great time wherever you go.
Wonderful. Actually, we've got an extra couple of minutes with you, Charles. So in terms of the CoreLogic data, I think now they're going even further back in history and actually valuing every single property around Australia every single day, I believe.
It's a system that they've been working on for some time, and it's incredible how they're able to do this. CoreLogic are one of the most innovative companies when it comes to data, and that's why so many organisations use them. That's going to be interesting because if you look at the valuation model right now, a lot of people are doing automated valuations, and they're doing them very quickly. They're pretty much using a lot of CoreLogic data in the valuation process. So I think it's really, really good the way it's going to come through, so people will be able to check their daily values. You're probably going to sit there all day like you do in the stock market if you're not careful, watching the chart move.
Wonderful. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Charles, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Chris.
Featured in this program is general in nature and therefore should not be relied upon. Guests appearing on the program may have commercial arrangements with some of the companies mentioned. Before making any investment, insurance or financial planning decisions, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you.